In this video, we'll briefly take a look at the following: turns, steps, compulsory figures, skating skills or moves in the field, step sequences, clusters, levels, transitions, spin and jump entries and exits, choreographic sequences. Let's get started. These videos, Figure Skating Demystified, would most be enjoyed by a figure skating fan, someone who watches skating, and maybe a lot of it, but would like to know more about exactly what they're seeing, why a step sequence gets the level that it does in this video, or what turn exactly they're seeing, what a cluster is, what the difference between a step sequence and a choreographic sequence is, and so forth. For a deep dive into each of these topics that were listed in the beginning, it would take far too much time. So at the end, I will provide a list of some videos and also printed resources that I found in my research and which you might enjoy if you'd like to learn even more. This video will help you appreciate, enjoy, and recognize what you're seeing, and therefore be an even more educated skating fan. So let's start with the components. The turns, there are 6, are a 3-turn, a bracket, a rocker, a counter, a loop, and a twizzle. This is the order that you learn them in skating. Then there are steps: toe steps, choctaws, mohawks, chassés, cross rolls, and change of edge. But you're right, it's more complicated than that. Every turn can be done starting on either foot and forward or backward, and on an outside or inside edge to start. So you have 4 options to start with on your right foot for a 3-turn. And you have 4 options on your left foot to start out on a 3-turn. You can see how this quickly gets a lot more complicated. In figures, something like a 3-turn can be done more than once on a circle, a double 3. Or you can use 3 circles, doing 1.5 circles on one foot, then switch feet and 1.5 circles on the other foot. That involves a change of edge and is called a serpentine. When you switch feet every time you complete one circle, you're doing a regular circle 8. That's the first kind of circle you learn in figures. If you go 2 circles going around both circles on one foot without putting your foot down, and then you switch feet and do the same thing on the other foot, that's called a paragraph. Because you're going around more than one revolution on a circle with serpentine and paragraph, there is an edge change involved. When we moved away from school figures and to moves in the field, now called skating skills, most of the patterns, the majority, are said to go around the rink counterclockwise because that is the general flow of traffic on a freestyle session. This enables skaters to practice their moves in the field or their skating skills on freestyle sessions. Turns and steps are combined as the test levels go up, mimicking step sequence components, such as combining them without putting the free foot down, learning clusters, gaining control, and learning transitions. That is definitely a plus with regards to skating skills. Coming from someone who learned compulsory figures as a child, there's a certain discipline in it and a certain mastery of the skills that I believe is missing from moves in the field or skating skills. The turns, especially, in order to keep the patterns possible to execute on freestyle sessions, are forced to be basically off axis. That is to say, they're not placed on a circle where they would be in compulsory figures. They were originally placed on circles and figure eights because the body naturally turns at that point on the circle, the rotation of the body and the edging of the skate. Skating skills tests essentially are teaching the turns correctly, but forcing the turns at an unnatural place for the body to execute the turn, which can cause issues with cleanliness of turns, accuracy, and can affect levels on step sequences throughout a skater's career. It can also lead to the timing and depth of turn not being what it would be with a figures background. I'm pretty sure you're not watching this for an analysis of compulsory figures, so we won't dwell on it, but just to show what I mean, a couple of visuals for you, first on paper and then a couple live action. No, we are not going through all the figures, don't worry. One of the easiest ones to see it on, the difference in the patterning between figures and skating skills, which would make a difference in the turns, is on a double three. So, as you can imagine from the name, double three means there are 2 3 turns on a circle. So, I've drawn, this would be my patch, or a patch of ice in a figure session, and I would draw my long axis and my short axis. They're perpendicular. And the size of your circle was dependent upon your height. So, someone taller could push probably stronger to get around the circle. So someone a little tight, just beginning, would have small circles. Now, if I'm going to fit 2 3 turns on this circle, I would have gone around, I would have drawn this with my scribe, yes, and I would have gone around and eyed where 1/3 of the circle, I would have tried to put the circle in thirds, and then I would have made a line with my heel in the ice, approximately at 1/3, and I apologize if these are not exactly right, okay? So, if we start on our right forward outside edge, which is normal, you would trace here and do a 3 turn at 1/3. Then you're gliding on your back right inside edge. You're rotating your upper body. You do another 3 turn. I'm sorry, that's a very bad draft. They should be, each side should be even. Sorry, I just failed my test. But you do back inside 3 turn, and now you're back on your right forward outside edge, and you complete your circle, doing a perfect tracing. I'm trying to do this through the camera. So, you'll notice it's a third of a circle, right? Well, there are double threes as well on your moves in the field test. But do you notice something? That I have it on paper. Do you notice something? Here, I'm going to draw thirds. But what am I drawing thirds of? A half circle. It is much harder to get the rotation, to get a nice turn here than it would be on a full circle. Can you imagine that? And then you're turning again here. You're having to rotate and turn your body way faster. Think about that. Okay, so compare this to the drawing of my figure circle. And maybe this won't mean something, maybe if you haven't done figures. But can you see how this would be a shallower turn? Can you see how you have a lot more time to rotate and have these nice lobes of the turn? And that this would be, you're pushing down, this is going down the side of the rink. And then you come down the other side of the rink. It leads to a shallower turn. You're going faster, and I just don't think it sets you up to do as nice of a turn. That is one example. The other is the loop. The shape of a loop, you're looking like this. It's not a circle. It's not too skinny. It's even. They're straight. The ride in and ride out are even. Okay, that's a nice drawing of a loop. Mine's not. I would fail my test again. Okay, so let's just pretend we're doing a figure loop. The circle is smaller, and I tried. You can do this with your heel, make a box so that it's even, etc. And this is where the body naturally wants to do a loop. I think more than almost any turn, the loop is relies on a feeling in your body of when it wants to execute the loop. Now on moves in the field, or skating skills, sorry, this would be a line down the length of the rink instead of on your patch of ice, okay? And there are several edge changes, really tight edge changes, and look at where the loop is done. It's on the quarter. It's on the quarter. It's not at the half. And this here generates the movement of the body that naturally has the loop happen. This can tend to get small. It can tend to get where it has a turn at the top. So you literally would like stop almost, and you see like a break in it. It should be very fluid. A loop should be very fluid. So I purposely drew this one bad. Yeah, I think it can get angled one way or the other because the rotation of the body is not natural for a loop to happen here. So now let's look at the loop, because I think that will show the best how it really does not look natural if you compare it to a loop done on a figures circle. And loops and double threes and all these things are parts of step sequences. So if they're compromised the way you learn them, just because of the pattern, not because of the coach or the skater or whatever, but because the pattern is not set up to have you do the best loop your body can do, that's a bummer.
Final figure, Brian Orser was in 4th place and under a great deal of pressure. The third figure is called a change loop. It's a figure with 3 circles with a small loop at each end. The important thing is the shape of the loops at each end. They must not be fat and round, but kind of elongated, and they must face each other and be on axis. The skaters don't have a diagram like this to follow. They must create their own on clean ice. Brian Boitano was in 3rd place going into this figure. He was behind Heiko Fischer of West Germany and Alexander Fadeev. This was the way Brian Orser skated the back outside change loop. Now you can see how small this figure was. To do this figure right, the skater must have very steady nerves, a steel-like concentration. The print is very small, and even the slightest glitches show up clearly. And then the judges moved in to look over the print. There are 9 judges, and even Brian Orser couldn't.
Well, Brian Orser did not win that figure, but you could see how gentle and slow and fluid the loop is. This is a junior moves in the field or junior skating skills test. You can see it's going down the length of the ice. This is a member of Team USA, has competed overseas several times and passed this test with distinction. So he's doing a really good job at the loops the way they're patterned for skating skills. Do you see the difference and do you hear it? You see a difference because of the pattern and it affecting the quality of the turn? Okay, moving on. I know you guys can't wait to get to the real stuff you tuned in for. So here we go. Why don't we take a look at turns by themselves? This is one of the most commonly asked questions by skaters and non-skaters alike. What turn am I looking at? If we remember, there are 6 kinds of turns: a 3-turn, a bracket, a rocker, a counter, a loop, and a twizzle. But remember, these can all be done starting forward or backward and on an inside or an outside edge. So suddenly you've got a great vocabulary when you learn your turns. But before we get too complicated, let's just look at the different turns, the first 4: 3-turn, bracket, rocker, and counter. And let's start all of them on the right forward outside edge, for simplicity's sake. One trick with turns: a turn is done on one foot. You do not change feet on a turn. Also, if you're calling out a turn, if you're giving it a name, you're going to say the foot that you're doing the turn on, the direction you're going, forward or backward, and the edge that you're starting on. So for example, if we look at 3 turns, you're starting on one edge and you're ending on the other edge. For example, you start on a outside edge and finish on an inside edge. You turn into your circle. And if we look at this example, she's pushing right, forward, outside, 3-turn, because she started on her right, forward, outside edge. Now she's going to do a right, forward, inside 3-turn, because she is starting on her inside edge. Now a right, backward, outside 3-turn. She's turning into the circle, right, backward, inside 3-turn. Now you know all the 3 turns. On to brackets. Brackets, like 3 turns, start on one edge and end on the other. The turn is outside the circle. You turn the opposite way from a 3-turn. So she's going to do a right, forward, outside bracket, because she's starting on her right, forward, outside edge. Now she'll do a right, forward, inside bracket, because she's starting on her right, forward, inside edge. That's how you know what to call a turn. Now a right, backward, outside bracket, and now she's going to do a right, backward, inside bracket. Again, the outside inside refers to the edge that you begin on. In the order of figures tests, you would learn a rocker first and then a counter. But it doesn't matter, and this is good for our brains. We're trying to figure out what the difference is between a rocker and a counter. So on a counter, the focus is on the circle that you're going to. That's where you're looking, that's where you're turning, and you're going from one edge to the same edge, either forward to backward or backward to forward. To me, a counter looks like almost it's a surprise. It's a surprise that you're ending up on the other circle. And you kind of have to check against yourself, whereas a rocker seems like it's a more natural flow. Let's take a look at some counters. This is a right, forward, outside counter. And a right, forward, inside counter. See how it's kind of a surprise the way she turns? To me it looks like a surprise. And you often have to draw back on the free foot to get the rotation. That was right. This is a right, backward, outside counter. So you draw back to get the rotation, and that's a right backward inside counter. Now let's look at rockers. Rockers are going to be from one edge to the same edge, forward or backward, outside outside, or inside inside. But this time, you're going to focus more on the circle that you start on, and your upper body will be rotating in a more natural way. Let's look at rockers now. Okay, now she's going to do a right, forward, outside rocker. She was rotating around the first circle with her upper body. That was a right, forward, inside rocker. Right, backward, outside rocker. Outside edge to outside edge. Her arms are going with the initial circle. Right, backward, inside rocker. Well, now you're a pro on turns. But since these things are combined in programs and step sequences and used as transitions, let's remind ourselves what the steps are in addition to the turns. Steps go from one foot to the other. There are toe steps, there's a Choctaw, a Mohawk, chasse, cross rolls, and a change of edge. The change of edge actually can be done just on one foot, and that is considered a step. I think you're going to recognize most of these just by sight. They're not as hard to distinguish as the turns, but when they're mixed up all together, it can be a little bit complicated. So let's start with something simple, like myself. And I'm only using this as an example to show that steps and turns and them in combination are done from the most basic levels of skating. And all skaters are required to put them in their programs. So I'm going to call out the items as I see them and see if you could beat me. And you can identify the items before me. That was not a loop. That was just a 3-turn cross in front. Right outside 3-turn, swing roll, chasses. It's a chasse. 1.5 twizzle. Ballet jump. Forward outside edge, right, forward outside 3-turn, right forward inside 3-turn, right forward inside 3-turn into a spin. That's a common entry for a spin. I'm keeping it going just because from the very beginning, these steps weave in. Cross in front, Mohawk, crossovers. A lot of people do a change of edge into a jump. Now I put my foot down, but you don't have to. That's a waltz jump. Chasse, left forward outside 3-turn, right back inside double 3, right forward inside 3-turn, left back outside 3-turn, ballet jump. Left forward outside 3-turn, left back outside 3-turn. Toe steps, counterclockwise. Forward T-stop, and there's your ending. I mean, in the most simple programs, you're going to have these elements, and they make a program. They make a program interesting. These are just toe steps. That's just an edge. That would be an attitude position. I did a lot of my spins from an inside 3 turn. Toe steps, inside edges, and something that a lot younger skaters do much better than I do are these, like, they're just, I don't know what the proper name for them is, but like hops that you're rotating. This was a more complex program. Okay, attitude, cross in front, counter, don't put my foot down, loop, loop, left, outside 3 turn, right back inside double 3, right inside 3. That I did an opposite direction mohawk, like an outside mohawk. That's a jump combination. A little bit of an Inebauer inside. Cross, hops. Now I'm going to do a difficult entrance to a waltz jump, okay? I had turns, change of edge. There was a change of edge. Turn forward, toe runs. A small, oh, here's my footwork. Right back outside double 3. A little bit of an Inebauer. There's a counter. Right back inside counter. This is part of the novice moves in the field test or skating skills test. Here's the chalk dog. This is the trademark. One edge to the other edge, outside to an inside. Toe runs. That's a forward outside loop. A rocker. A loop. Or sorry, a twizzle. And an illusion. And to make my entrance and exit harder for my spiral, I just stepped straight from the backward edge onto the spiral. And this is going to be counter, and then I would be going into a Lutz from there. That's a chasse. Right back inside 3 turn. Twizzles. Ballet jump. So there you have it. They're woven in right from the beginning, right? Did you recognize some of those? Before we start watching step sequences, let's just go straight to clusters. Why not? A cluster is 3 or more turns done in a row without putting down your free foot. Junior and senior skaters are required to do 2 clusters in their short program step sequence. This is a really good video to watch clusters. He's going to have his skaters do them, and then he's going to do it using the added difficulty of having his free foot with the toe on a hockey puck, which would just slide. So he can't put any weight on that foot, otherwise he'd basically fall. So let's watch his skaters, and you can see the turn written below. And now he's going to do the same thing with the hockey puck. Alright, let's watch this one. Forward inside bracket. And we're ending with a forward outside twizzle. Here we go. He gets the hardest one to do the twizzle with the toe on the hockey puck. Alright, let's watch an actual step sequence. Toe runs. Bunny hop. Right forward inside rocker, twizzles, back inside loop. Let's watch it again. Bunny hop, right forward inside rocker, return, twizzle, back inside loop, toe runs, Add a little choreographic step and addition there. To her second cluster. Left forward inside bracket, right back outside rocker, forward outside loop. Same sequence there. Toes. Twizzles going her opposite way. An extension into a rocker. And this is a very well put together novice women's step sequence. But did you notice her going from one thing to the other without putting the foot down? That's what makes it tricky. Do you notice that she's changing directions of rotation? She has some movements that are high and some low. There's a lot of variety of positions and accents with the arms and legs and head, etc. Now freestyle elements are allowed, like spirals, like spread eagles, etc., woven in, if it makes sense with the music and it doesn't eliminate turns, because that matters for your level of your step sequence. Also, you used to have to do a certain pattern, a circular, straight line, or serpentine. Now you can do whatever you want as long as it's recognizable and it covers all of the ice. The other thing is, at least 30% of your movement have to be done where you're basically off axis. So basically you're out of balance with what your edge and what foot you're on the ice. So you see people do these leaning moves or really impressive use of their body. Andrew Torgashev, of course, Jason Brown. A lot of the really amazing women. Kaori would do it for sure. Brady Chanel, Amber Len, Nina Pinzeroni. I mean, all of these top skaters, if they're to get a level 4, you have to have at least 30% of your movement where you're basically out of balance and shouldn't be able to balance, but you can if you have the control. So that's why that's in the junior and senior programs. Well, I did not get to everything on my list. Not nearly. And I'm sorry about that. I ended up having a hospital emergency stay, and you know, life happens. So just quickly before I finish this video, and maybe I'll have a part 2 at some point when I get a bit better, I wanted to mention the thing I didn't mention in my at least description was loops we looked at with figures, and you saw them how they're done like on a freestyle on the skating skill test, and twizzles. And you know, often of course twizzles are required in ice dance. Most figure skaters are going to put them in their step sequence. They're very commonly used. They're interesting, right? They're not like the turns. And something to notice on both loops and twizzles is that, well, in a loop, you do check after your whole loop. But you know how it was like a teardrop shape? There is no break there, okay? And like when you were learning them in figures, it was really hard to establish like the knee action that generates that loop. That it's super smooth. Twizzles are, it's kind of like spinning, only you're moving down the ice. And you notice that ice dancers move very fast down the ice. Part of their level, or part of how probably their grade of execution, is going to be how much ice coverage they get, because it's harder to cover more ice on a twizzle. The more ice you cover, the faster you're going, the harder, because you generally are going to learn to spin, at least on 2 feet, or you know, on a public session or something, long before you learn to twizzle. So you become accustomed to wanting to center a spin, right? You want a spin to be all in one place. Twizzle needs to keep moving. If you looked at the tracing, it would keep moving down the ice. If you're in one place, you're not doing a proper twizzle. You'll not get credit for it. It's easy to lose your balance. That's why ice dancers, especially, they often will. It's high vulnerability. I mean, they have their arms up and their leg out, right? If you go down, if you start to like wiggle at all, it's over. You're on the ground. I had my 1.5 twizzle. That's what it starts at, maybe 1. It's easier to do a 1.5 though, to go from forward and end up backward, because you're in your landing position if you go forward and end up backward. So it's kind of easier to do 1.5. And I fell one time. And the thing is, when you fall in a twizzle, it's like this, and suddenly you're on the ground. And when you're learning them, you're not going very fast across the ice, okay? You're moving across the ice, but not quickly. And just suddenly you're on the ground. And I will honestly tell you, when you fall in skating, I mean, it's not good to fall, but it's almost better to fall the faster you're going across the ice, because you slide. And if you fall and you're going very slowly, or you're standing in your starting position, you just fall, you're just not moving, and you're on the ice. So like if your music is playing and you're not sliding, you're losing even more ground to catch up. So like if you look back at Isabel Levito, I think juvenile or intermediate nationals, she falls going out to her starting position. That would be like extremely scary, right? I think she stepped on her foot on a T-stop and just and then she gets up and she's like here. But if you fall and you're sliding and you haven't injured yourself at all, you can get up and you have still some momentum. You're at least moving. If I fall here, you find that you see this in pairs, where one person has to catch up to it's very obvious that has to catch up to the other person, and it's exhausting. It also, I don't know why I got on this sidetrack of falling, but it's true. If you have not skated yourself, you can knock the wind out of yourself when you fall. Even if you fall and you're behind, you can fall hard enough that you knock the wind out of yourself. So you can imagine how exhausting it is to then get through a program, right? I see this a lot in the beginning of the season when I'm volunteering, because people are learning new things in their off season, maybe like a twizzle, and they want to put it in for, add elements, add difficulty. You have to continue to add difficulty, right? So you see a lot more like wipeouts in the beginning of the season, because it's new. It's new in a program. Of course people are going to fall. And then by the end of the season, people will have mastered things a lot more. That's why you see a more polished program, right, by the end. But it's to your advantage to try stuff from the beginning of the season, just to have the experience trying it. Because number one, it's hard to do. Number two, it's really hard to do in a program. Number three, if you mess up and you fall, it's hard to get up and keep going. And number four, you add competition, nerves, and all that. I mean, yeah. So the more reps you have, and frankly, unless you're hurt on the fall, good coaches force you to finish. If you fall in your starting pose, they're like, I'm not restarting your music. And if you hear, this is my opinion, but I think it's true. You do see sometimes coaches allowing people to stop their music if they mess up and go back and redo stuff. And there's a time and place for that, but if you're trying to develop endurance and competition follow through and not looking like you're giving up. I don't know if you've ever watched someone and they like barely make it to the end. I'm going to venture a strong guess that in their coaching environment, they're not forced to do full run-throughs. Now, most skaters and most probably athletes of all different kinds, you do double run-throughs. Now, because everyone needs to get their music in a session, that can mean, it often means doing a full-out run-through like of your free skate. And then while someone else is going and they have the right of way, you would run your whole program again, like right away, with no music, and sometimes with jumps, sometimes not. But all the in-between, like maintaining speed, all the full-on choreography. And those step sequences are very tiring. Can I tell you that as well? They're as tiring as the jumps are. So sometimes you do full run-throughs with everything. Sometimes if you know you're training for altitude, the training has to be modified to account for that. If you're like at sea level and you're going to 10,000 feet, you have to plan for that. But by the end of the season, all serious competitors are doing double run-throughs, or they're doing their free skate, and then when the music turns off and someone else is taking their turn, they do their short with everything. Without the music, full on. All the expression that they would use for the judges, all the energy, all the polish, all the extensions, not like half marking or whatever. Yeah. But it is to your advantage to fall and get back up and keep going, because then it's in your muscle memory to do that. I was watching film a parent sent me today, and her daughter was trying a triple sow cow for the first time. She's a novice in her program. I mean, she like took a bad, like she like ended up on her stomach. I mean, it would have been a painful fall. And when you're first putting something in a program, normally you put it first or second. So she wipes out on the first jump. I was so impressed. She was up and going with her program. I could tell she had done that in practice, right? She wasn't like to catch up. No, she got up and she kept going. And guess what? She landed the next thing. I mean, that is the key, is regrouping, which is something I was not good at. But you know the skaters that are like scrappy and they can like turn something around. That is another key competitive feature. I'm sorry I got so off track. Part 2 video, we'll go over like even, I didn't get to, some of the step sequences that are epic that we should look at. But our guest on Zoom could do that with us much better than me. So let's let Della, she was the novice lady I was showing in that video. That was 2 years ago. So she can tell us everything about step sequences. Yes. Yeah. Fabulous. This is going to be great. I led that on purpose. Also, I know, because my coach is out at the same rank, I mean, even if I would mess up, he would, and if he saw me wanting to give up at 46, he'd come out and be like by me and be like, come on, you got it, come on, let's go. That's part of the coach's responsibility. It's not like taskmaster, it's like tough love. It's not mean. It's like, you want to be successful, so you finish all the way. Most coaches the things they hate the most are popped jumps. Unless like you're on a weird edge and you're gonna wipe out if you try and do it, which can happen on a Salchow and a Lutz in particular, or an axle. Sometimes it's safer to not literally, if you're like gonna go this way and and your coach will know. Popped jumps and half-assed finishes, I would say, are the, like, giving up. Yeah, I didn't get in trouble. Gosh, I was in my mid-40s. But the question, which was very appropriate and fair to be asked, was I had a combination that had a single toe loop on the end of it. I didn't do it. My coach is like, where was the toe loop? I mean, he had like a lot of positive feedback and stuff, but where was that toe loop? I could have done it. I didn't do it. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you could have done the toe loop. You know, it was a completely fair point. Yep, I was paying him to help me. So, if you want to know, falling can knock the wind out of you, which not only have you lost points right away, but it can compromise the rest of your program. It's hard. That's why it's important to keep going in practice, to do double run-throughs. If you ever hear double run-throughs, that's what that is. And then, like, a lot of the times, because we have hockey lines on most of our rinks, also you can do, I don't know, the 60-second drill, I think they call it. You're supposed to be able to, within 60 seconds, go from one end to the blue line and back. Stop, back. To the red line in the middle and back. To the far blue line and back. To the end and back as fast as you can go. And most of the time you do it after you do a run through of a program. Another training tactic. Who has kids or has done this themselves? Mary, you've got a daughter who skates, right? She's probably done that. Yeah. This all makes tapering at the end of the year seem like, not like it's a piece of cake, but you're ready. You're ready. That's when you know someone's really in good condition. Gotta prepare. It's hard work, but so is anything worth fighting for, right? Anyway, I hope you liked the video. I hope the turn tutorial was helpful. I found the person that I used their turns to be very helpful to try and distinguish turns. And I hope the bit on school figures was a little bit interesting and shows why those of us purists are get frustrated, because the beautiful turns and loops and things of figures are compromised by the pattern. And that's not because of the skater. It's made to go on a freestyle session because patch sessions cost just as much money. You can have less people on the ice. They're not good for TV. You know, all the things against figures. And so they change them, and I don't think it's for the better, frankly. I get it for step sequences, but I think it compromises the integrity of figure skating. And that, I think, is too bad. It is very hard to try and find a scribe. If you happen to see a scribe, Google it, scribe figure skating or something. If you ever see one at a garage sale, will you get it? Please, I'll buy it from you. Someone might be selling it who doesn't really know what it is, because they don't make them anymore. So they're like relics. They're like impossible to find. Yeah. And they're cool. They're like a giant compass that you use in math. Did anyone use a compass in math? I did. Anyway, thanks for coming to my home, and happy skating season. I hope to see you on Zoom soon. And then we'll get the expert description of the terms. That's what you need. Okay. Della's going to walk us through it all. All right. See you soon.